Hey guys, OGalbina here, and it is time. The third time we've done this, we are going to be going over your hottest Draft League Pokemon takes. I do this video every single year. It's the third time we've done it, and it's always a banger. It's always fun to read over these. And I'm excited to do it again this year. If you guys do enjoy today's discussion video, going over the hottest takes in Draft League, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel. We are on our way to 5,000 subs by the end of the year, and I would really appreciate it if you help me along that way. It really helps a lot of smaller creator like myself. I do want to preface this though. I will be obviously reading through these takes, and I'm not going to agree with them all. Fun fact, I probably won't agree with most of them. I'm very boring when it comes to my Draft League takes and things like that, so when I hear crazy shit, I go, but that doesn't mean it's an open discussion to be mean or shit talk people because of their thoughts and opinions. That's the whole point of this, right? And people feel confident enough to share their opinions and their hot takes. You can 100% disagree in the comments. Make sure we're not rude though, right? You know, we can be like, I think that's crazy, but you can't be like, you're a fucking idiot, die. You know what I mean? So just keep that in mind as you discuss this in the comments. With that being said though, go ahead and discuss these. What's the craziest take you saw on this thread was, what you agree with, what you don't agree with, and what your hot take in Draft League is. If you didn't get a chance to comment on the Twitter thread, you can just follow me on Twitter, do a ton of Draft League discussions based through there all the time. Also, or with that being said, let's jump into it. You might see me in different outfits throughout. I'm going to kind of tackle this in multiple recording sessions because we're at 69 replies in this, so there's a lot. And the first one we have, I don't know if it's the hottest take, but boy oh boy was I happy to see him, my GOAT, Matt O'Shea, dropping in real quick from the retirement home just to say Terra sucks. And while I think I'm at the point where I don't hate Terra anymore, I kind of see it as maybe not my favorite mechanic, but I do see it as very balanced mechanically now that we have kind of understood and played with it an entire generation. I do understand people who don't like it and don't think it's very fun. After doing No Terra BBR, I found out that I don't think I enjoy the Gen 9 like meta in general, and it isn't necessarily like Terra dependent. But I know Matt obviously does not like Terra. He stopped playing recently, right? And I'm sure his enjoyment of the metagame was probably a big part of that. Or Kirby, one of my best friends, absolutely despises playing with Terra, and he even says later in the thread that he doesn't think it's broken. It just isn't fun, and that's a totally valid thing to think. So while I don't think Terra is broken, I understand not enjoying it. Next up, we have Seabad here saying if you're in a recording mandated league, playing for entertainment is better than playing for the win. I understand what we're saying here. I think if you're in an upload required league to, you know, my fellow Draft League YouTubers out there is a level of, you know, being exciting, being hype. And I can tell you right now, when I play my showdown leagues and my tournaments and, you know, all that stuff, and I'm not recording, I'm dead quiet, sitting like this the entire time, you know what I mean? Whereas when I'm playing a Draft League game, I'm being more animated. I'm trying to talk up the game, explain, blah, blah, blah. However, I guess this is one of my hot takes. I think it is much more fun to watch someone winning or actively trying to get consistently better than it is to someone who's just, you know, in it for shits and giggles. Now, there's nothing wrong with playing that way. Keep that in mind. Again, this is just how I see it and my enjoyment. But if I see someone who doesn't seem like they're trying very hard and they do not want to win, and that is not like the main driving, motivating factor for them, it's tougher for me to watch personally, and I think that comes across in my content. I'm 100% a guy who plays for the win. If I got to timer stall you out of a game in Generation 9 Draft League, I'm doing it on the biggest stage, baby. We're getting that dub, because I personally find it more interesting to watch people win and watch that fight for the championship than to see the silly heat set. You know what I mean? So I think it depends on how you look at it, and I think it's, you know, different strokes for different folks. You know what I mean? Next up, we have Bass saying Dragon Ball isn't a first overall pick, especially if Pursuit is allowed. So I'm assuming he means Nacdex. If he's talking Paldea or Swish, no way, you're wrong. I could see that in Nacdex. There's so many options in Nacdex, and if Pursuit's in the game, I think Pursuit is one of the main reasons why Polt feels so oppressive, because it's even less counterplay to it, right? Polt's always in a position where it can Shadow Ball or Draco Meteor, and then U-turn. Whereas if there was Pursuit in the game, you don't want to Shadow Ball or Draco on my T-Tar, because if I catch you, Ricky, if I catch you and you get the 50-50 wrong on my Pursuit, your Dragon Bolt is dead. So I think that's an important factor to kind of keep in mind, is if it's Nacdex, for sure. If not, I think you're smoking on something crazy, Mr. Bash. I think it's the greatest Draft League Pokemon of all time because it has always existed in formats in which there is no Pursuit, right? I think it's a big reason why it's so broken. Except we have Shay here saying a tiered system instead of points creates more fun, unique, and engaging teams. I disagree. I actually 100% wholly disagree. The reason that we do points drafts now is because it does not restrict us so heavily like the tiered system used to be. I get it. I think it's more so nostalgia for a lot of people. And there's another take later on. I think it's from Nate that will kind of just be reiterating this when it comes up to him. But I think that people really miss the time in which like tier drafts were a thing. But if you think about it, it's inherently more restricting. You are being forced to draft a Pokemon of a certain perceived skill here, 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 and here, whereas opposed to going top heavy, opposed to going a lot more middle heavy, or even more bottom heavy, and really getting all the low point guys you want first, and things of the sort, really only having one top end guy, or if you're fucking Amel, and you feel like drafting 10 Pokemon under 10 points because you just felt like it this draft and you like the way the team rolled out, right? And I think the biggest example of this was those Pokemon that kind of teeter on the tier line, right? And I'm going to take you back to Generation 7 because I don't think they would teeter on the tier line now. But we're going to take you back to Generation 7. And right in the middle of Tier 1, Tier 2, there's always a couple Mons that they would either go up to Tier 1 or come down to Tier 2. If they're in Tier 2, crazy value. But if they're in Tier 1, where a lot of people thought they should be because they're considerably better than everything in Tier 2, they were almost undraftable because they were so much worse than everything in Tier 1. And that's what Point says. It more accurately gauges how valuable things are, letting us move them up and down a point, opposed to an entire tier, which can span Pokemon that would, like the equivalent of 5 to 6 or 7 points, right? Biggest example for this is going to be Infernape in Generation 7. Pokemon you see in Tier 1, Tier 2. You'd also see the Thundies oftentimes moving up and down in between these guys. And I think that it's really, really nice that we have a scale that lets us kind of more dynamically price these Pokemon as the trends go up and down for them through generations, through draft leagues, through understandings of the meta, and things of the sort. I think tier drafts are very, very almost archaic in the sense of drafting in that way. So I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say I super disagree with you, Shay. Next up, we have A12 here. Wow, what a beautiful take. Diggersby is the best Pokemon in draft format, and Game Freak did not release it in Scarlet and Violet because they're cowards and know what it would have done with Terra. Big. You heard it here from the Diggersby man himself. He knows somebody at Game Freak that was really upset about it. So true. You're spitting right now. Next up, we have J Bear here saying draft players need to be more receptive to criticism of their tiers, prep, and play. Acting like you're smarter than best is not the way to improve and grow the community. So I agree, but I think with a caveat, and me and J Bear have talked about this before, you have to know how to criticize people in a constructive way. And I think a lot of times people think they might be being constructive. And something that me and Jay Bear argue about all the time, because he says some shit like, dude, I want to fight you right now. Stop talking like that. Because if you come on too strong and your, constructive criticism is this is dog shit, or you are dog shit, this was a terrible play, why'd you bring this? Of course I'm not going to listen to you, you douche, But if you're like, hey man, good game, and again, you also have to realize when people are looking for criticism from their games too. You can't immediately after someone gets smoked be like, you know what, let's talk about what you did wrong there. No, they might not want to. I know when I first lose, it's going to take me 30 minutes to cool down before I'm going to go and review my gameplay and see how I'm doing. But even then, when I get to that point, if I'm talking with, let's say Kaz, I usually go to Kaz a lot when I'm playing bad, when I feel like I'm prepping bad. If I'm having trouble with matchup, I'll talk to him because I consider him a better player than me, and kind of a very good mentor in the sense that he will be harsh with me. He will let me know straight up what I'm fucking up on and doing wrong, but he's not going to put me down while I'm doing it and say hey, you're terrible and you're an idiot. This is why. This is what you're doing wrong. These are the steps you need to make to improve on this. I just talked with him the other day because I feel like I've been struggling lately. The last, couple months since LTM, I've been very inconsistent. I either play out of my mind or play really bad. I'm very, very inconsistent. I'm still making playoffs, but that's not to the level I want to play. I want to, be in contention for the league all the time, whether it be in my draft or my play. I had a 4-hour conversation with him, and it wasn't him being like, no, man, you're doing good. He's like, no, this is what you're fucking up on. This is what you're doing. This is how you need to change your mindset and your approach. And I think that's important, and it is very important. So J-Bear is 100% right in that sense, and in the sense of if you want to get better, you have to listen to people who may know more than you, and straight up listen and be like, okay, yeah, you're right. I mean, obviously what I'm doing ain't working, right? What you're doing is at least working more than me, and we can kind of bounce ideas off each other and get better. But it has to be constructive criticism, and a lot of people really struggle with that concept. And I think Jay Bear is tweeting this because I think it is a concept that he can struggle with sometimes himself. Again, as a friend of mine, me and Jay Bear are friends. That's my guy. But I mean, he knows that I think that as well. But yeah, again, there's also an example of that I'm not bullshitting. I think that's what the Jay Bear struggles with. But I'm not screaming and putting him down for it. And now, speaking of screaming and putting people down for things, Bash. You need to stop the Terra Jolteon bullshit, man. We're gonna have a fight soon. You and me, fisticuffs. We need to stop seeing shit like this in the time. I'm not even gonna say it out loud. I can't say it out loud because someone might agree with you, and then there's another person in the world that thinks Terra... Nope. On to the next. Next is a more sane take from Mr. Bash. In Pal, they should bring back more clerics. Heal Bell and Aromatherapy. I don't think this is a hot take. I think it'd just be cool. Not having, status counterplay is annoying. I don't think it's as big of a deal in the sense that, like, there's not as much toxic anymore. But Thunderwave feels very impressive this gen, like as in terms of speed control, and I like the option of being able to have more defensive counterplay. I think defensive counterplay in general in Paldea needs to be more widely distributed. I think the recovery nerf was one of the worst things to happen to Pokemon, personally. But yeah. Next up, we have Keegan here saying, Uzum is only looked on fondly because of the growth of the community at the time. It's unbalanced at 16 players, and generation mechanics is the least fun to play against. Not counting Kirby and his Dynamax. I don't agree. I think Keegan, well, I guess this is a personal preference, right? In the sense of, like, it's not fun to use Z. I think Z is actually a pretty balanced mechanic. Once you play enough Usum, I don't know how much Usum Keegan played personally, but I definitely don't agree with Z moves being anything too crazy. But I don't think it's an unbalanced deck. I've played in a lot of Usum tours recently, and every time I drafted them over the last year, I feel like there's plenty enough for every single person. I think it just might be a drafting thing for Keeg. I don't know. I love Usum though. I do have big nostalgia goggles. I will at least agree there. I have huge nostalgia goggles. It's when I got into draft. It's when a lot of people got into draft. Generation 7, there was a huge bump in draft players and draft content. In Generation 9, there was the biggest one, right? It was the odd generation, so next gen we're fucked. But those were like the two biggest ones, and it was when I got in, right? So I get it there. And then even better take. All ORAS leagues should be required to allow XY Protean Greninja. So the inside joke is that, speaking of Kaz and Keegan, Kaz runs a league called the Home Classic, or Kazlik. I forget exactly which one it's actually pronounced as. I always spell it wrong in my prep docs. But the league is Generation 3 and Generation 6. And Generation 7 as of last season. So 3, 6, 7. It's a multi-gen league. And in Generation 6, they have a Greninja allowed to Protean with a complex ban if it cannot use its ORAS move tutors, so it loses out on a ton of coverage in Generation 6 in particular. I think it's a really silly complex ban. Kaz always gets really mad when we make fun of XY Gren. I think it's fucking ridiculous. I think it's very silly, but hey, it gives the league a little bit more, why am I blanking on words? Because I'm recording, this always happens. Personality. It's like a cool personality thing for the league. So I'm here for it. It's become iconic at this point. Next up, we have Lars here saying this gen the games played are way too short because everyone is way too focused on an offensive build, and it's getting kind of boring to see stupid stuff sweep every week. Also, Terra's getting boring now. I don't know if this is a hot take, right? Like, I don't know if you can have a take that the meta is offensive. It just is. Right? Like, there's not anything we can do about that. I don't think that's due to a lack of people trying to play defensively or playing balance. It's just not good. Right? And people are going to play consistent playstyles in which they are winning. And offense is the way to go this generation. I do agree Terra's getting boring. I think just Gen 9's getting boring. We're kind of past the lifespan, right? It's been like 2 years. We're going to get a whole nother year of it. I guarantee you by the end of Gen 9, I'm not going to play that shit for a long time. And I think Terra obviously has a byproduct. I will say, though, again, after playing BBR this last season with no Terra, I didn't feel any different at the end of the season. So I think it's just Gen 9 that's getting boring. Next up, we have Endless Gadgets. I almost just said full government name. I know it's right there, but it would have been weird because I know it's endless. Terra is a terribly designed mechanic and is only legal because people think it's more balanced than Dynamax, which it barely is. And then Tapu Koko in Usum is the Pult of the generation. If Usum was still the current generation, it would be banned in 8-mon tours. I kind of agree with the Koko thing. It feels very impressive in Gen 7. It's incredible in Usum. I feel like there's a little more counterplay to it. It just mostly comes down to speed and typing. There's a lot more things that resist the dual stabs than Pulp, which is the main thing. And the Pokemon that resist Koko are a lot better in my opinion. So I think that's a big thing. I do think Koko's far and above the best model in Usum, and definitely can be very overwhelming for a lot of teams. But yeah, the Terra is a terribly designed mechanic. That's a personal thing. Like, Ring, I don't think I agree. Maybe for singles it's not super optimal, because of how many things we need to Terra ban. But for doubles, I think it was really incredibly designed. I've never had a problem with Terra and doubles. Played in a draft league that was, you know, a VGC draft league, and everything was allowed to Terra whenever. We just had to Terra preview. It was fine. I felt completely fine with it. And barely more to balance Dynamax is crazy. So no. Except we have Big Kirby here saying, 1, Primarina sucks. Wrong. That guy's fucking awesome. Anything that is a water fairy typing is incredible. Number 2, early gen decks are actually a lot of fun. I agree. I mean, part of the reason we think they're so fun is because they were just introduced, right? Early gen dexes, so that means they're new. So that's mad exciting. We're like, oh shit, new Pokemon game. But yeah, it also forced us to be a little bit more creative. I think early gen Galar sucked. I hated that meta. Maybe it's because we were also doing Dynamax, but I hated that meta. Early gen 9, ton of fun. Loved it. Next up we have, you don't need to bring a Grassy Seed mon every time you play Rillaboom. Not just a take, just a PSA. Just letting the people know with your platform. And we have one more from Kurt here saying, thumbnails like these are so much more hype to click on than today's, coming from a thumbnail designer. So this is what I mean. All right, I guess it's not a better view. This is a better one. So I understand what he's saying, because I see these thumbnails and I get excited too. But again, I think it's just a nostalgia thing, guys. This is when we were all coming home from school, coming home from class in high school, college, middle school, even for some of you guys. And we were seeing the new A-Drive video, the new Mega Mogwai video, whatever. And you saw the GBA logo next to it, the WBE logo, and you're like, oh my gosh. Because that was when you got into Draft League. This is when I got into Draft League, was in Generation 7. This is a little bit before me. This is Generation 6, so even earlier, right? And I understand that. I think it's definitely very nostalgic, and you might enjoy it, but from a, like, objective standpoint, the thumbnails of today are insane. I mean, Kurt's the guy who makes my thumbnails, right? So that's funny that he has this take in general. But I mean, like, Just Weavot. I mean, that dude's a fucking wizard with the sticks in Photoshop, man. Like, that dude's insane. And his stuff is incredible. And I'm sure if he was putting his thumbnails on these videos way back in the day, they would have done even better. And then at the end of the day, as much as we like to, like, pretend like we're doing things for the love of the game, a lot of it is view predicated. If you're putting in a lot of time into these projects and into these draft leagues, like I myself am, I work 40 hours a week, guys. I take 12 units of classes at all times as well, guys. Like, I don't have... It's very frustrating if you put out a video and it does really bad with all the time you put into it. So I understand wanting to kind of optimize the thumbnails and things like that. Posted back in the day, this was the optimized thumbnail. Now it's not. So, yeah. Next up, we have Liv going to jail, saying Generation 9 should explore Open Terra on all mods with preview. No. Next, we have J. Ricky saying Dragapult is not ban-worthy. I understand this take. I really don't agree. I think Pull is so over-centralizing and so incredibly good as long as you're using it correctly. I think people a lot of time expect Pull to just OHKO and 2-8 KO everything when it really isn't the case, but that's not why it's so good. I think it's such a good facilitator on top of being incredible offensively, and being so damn fast and having such an incredible move pool and being so versatile is what makes it ban-worthy. And I think that's what people should probably see. Toxipike's overrated as fuck. I do super agree on this one. This is one I very much so agree. You see a Draft League player see a team on the opposing side with no grounded poison, and they're leading their Focus Sash poison type or their Fat poison, and they're getting up T-spikes. Where sometimes that's great, right? That's incredible. But we live in a generation where 1, boots exists, 2, removal is pretty widely distributed, 3, boots exist, and 4, and honestly, maybe one of the most important, because people don't really realize this, you don't need a grounded poison if your team isn't weak to T-spike, you know? You might be really weak to T-spike with no grounded poison, but that doesn't mean that everyone on your team is super weak to it, right? You know, I mean, there's a ton of teams that have half their team off the ground and other mons on the ground that like to hold boots often and things like that. I mean, if you're bringing boots and no ground poison, you only poison one mon. Just bring Toxic, bro. You know, it's not too bad. But yeah, so I understand that. But and then we have, this might come as a shock, but Citrus Berry is one of the best items in the game. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to J. Ricky's Garden. Fun fact about J. Ricky. He created the Citrus Berry. He was just a wee lad, and he went up to Game Freak in Generation 3. Oh, Ruby and Sapphire is about to come out, and he handed them a drawing of a yellow berry. And they were like, what's this? And he went, bleh, bleh. And it sounded like citrus, and that's how the Citrus Berry came to be. Everybody say thank you, J. Ricky, in the comments, please. Alright, on to the next. We got Rosary God here saying Terra is the second most balanced gimmick we've gotten. It needs some restriction, but with the gimmicks we've gotten, Terra is not as broken as people say it is. Yeah, I think at this point I agree with that. We've kind of talked about this before. I'd say it's third still, but I don't think this is the worst take in the world. I'd be interested to see like what your list is, Rose, if you're watching this and you want to let me know. But I'd say it is Megas, Zemus, Terra, and then obviously Dynamax way fucking down here. But yeah. Next up is Dash Steps out saying hot take Terapagos is actually garbage. It definitely is not a round 1 Mon. It's force boost 100% of the time, or it can't use its ability. And if Terapagos leads, it doesn't have enough power to win the game. Terapagos needs to become Terapagos Stella to be a threat. I think it's definitely overrated in the sense that a lot of times you see people draft as the number 1 threat. I think you're really, really, really being performative, though, in how bad you think it is. It is not force boots 100% of the time. You just need to account for hazards being up and no way to remove them otherwise. I think if you're drafting Terapagos and it is your remover, you're fucking up and doing something incorrectly. I definitely think it can be incredibly versatile. I saw Keegan really cool, like, Toxic variant to beat an opposing Terapagos mirror, which is really cool. I feel like people don't really explore the really, really fat sets. Love Meteor Beam. I think Meteor Beam is really, really terrifying. I also love Specs. I think the game has been played. Yeah, I ran a mock recently with Joey where I ran a Specs Terapagos in the matchup, and it was really strong. It wasn't great normal resist, especially alongside the coverage. You click that Earth Power once, Beto Banana, you're gonna die in a Terra Star Storm next time now. So I think Terapagos is good. I don't think I would draft it as my number 1 option either, but to say it's bad, I think that's a little bit much. Next up we have Oboe, again, back on the Gen 7 hate. Man, I don't get it. Terra Gen 7 was amazing for draft league growth, but the Dex plus Z-moves were horrible. Not very balanced at all. Plus Z-moves are the most OP gimmick. I just don't agree. One, we have Dynamax. Two, I think, I think Terra is definitely a little bit more impressive. I think maybe a lot of Wi-Fi players think Z-moves are a lot better than they are because they haven't played a lot of Showdown Leagues where Terra Preview, like Free Terra, is like the common format. Because I do agree Z-moves are more impressive than like you can Terra on Tuesdays with 3 types on your 7-pointer. Sure, that's gonna feel a little bit more impressive, but in general, I think that Z-moves were probably the most tame mechanic of the 3, to be honest. Maybe not the most balanced of the 3, but definitely the most tame. Really just takes 150-50 opposed to 7 with fucking Terra sometimes. And yeah, I think the Gen 7 Dex was incredible. I loved it. I thought it was very balanced. Again, it was right to the point of like Nat Dex before too many Pokemon got introduced. And as someone who's playing in an Athletics League right now, just building from a week 1, I mean, very overwhelming. Very, very, very overwhelming. So, yeah. Next up, we have Cly's saying Rillaboom should be 15 points minimum. I think it's a little high. I don't know if this is like a hot take. I'm trying to think of like where we price Rillaboom. I feel like if we have it like 2 points lower, is that really like that much of a difference? I also think that maybe that's another draft league hot take I have. People scream over Amon being like 1 point more expensive or 1 point cheaper than they typically see it. That shit drives me crazy. Yeah, go ahead. You saved an extra point. Now you get Muck instead of Swalot. Shut up. That's obviously not what Kai's saying here, but this just reminded me of it. I think Rillaboom's definitely worse this generation, but it's still a great Pokemon, great facilitator of offense. I don't think it like banned herders as well as it used to, but yeah, in general, still really strong. Already continuing on, we have Soul Blaze here saying Mirror Herb is the best item in Generation 9, followed closely by Heavy Duty Boots. I mean, I do think that Boots is the best item. I wouldn't say Mirror Herb is close. I think it was a really cool niche item that was added, especially in a generation where offense is king and setup spam and cheese is everywhere. Having an option to reliably shut that down, or at least not reliably, I guess it's a little strong. Having an option to shut that down or kind of flip things on their head is really nice. The Torterra effect, right? You got a Shell Smasher, you got to be careful of the Mirror Herb. I think it really kind of at least adds a little bit more counterplay than just don't let it shut up. But yeah. Next up is CB Markets here saying draft is great as people can create their own formats, but 8 to 10 mon maximums. The format should mess with no minimum amount of mons too. I guess like no minimum beyond 6. Or I guess you could draft 4 mons and then just only have 4 for the whole season. And then infinite, in parentheses, a lot of winning teams exists on both sides of the team builder. Draft skill cap is in the team builder. Matchups aren't always 50-50s. Matchups are much like RPS. I don't know what RPS means, but I think what Marcus is trying to say is that when he says like winning teams exist on both sides of Team Builder, is that like a good player can see an optimal matchup and maybe make the best out of it, or something I feel like I'm learning, because I always feel like I have bad matchups. And part of the reason, one, is maybe because I'm drafting suboptimal teams that might have tougher matchups. But I'm starting to learn that I think it is like a skill thing, and it's something I'm really struggling with right now in kind of finding the right approach and mindset to matchups, and, you know, how good or bad your matchup is, I suppose, right? A lot of times we say, this one's good against me, this one's good against me, this one's good against me, I'm screwed, before really finding the pathing. Again, I was talking to Kaz recently, and he kind of like brought up as like, yeah, these mons might be scary and it might take you 5 days, but eventually you can find, with almost every matchup, a winning path and a winning game plan. And when you find that winning game plan, the game feels easy. It's just a matter of getting there, which I think I totally agree with. And I think that's kind of what Marcus is saying here, is like, regardless of matchup, regardless of what they have, there is a path to victory. You just have to be willing to put in the time and the effort to find it. Next up, we have Aaron 12 saying, correctly played low tier mons usually perform better than high tier mons. I don't know what that means. Yeah, I'm not sure what that means exactly. Does that just mean you've done good with low tier mons? I mean, that's not true. Unfortunately, it's just not a correct thing, I guess. Like, in the sense that, like, if both of them are being performed with correctly, the higher tier mons are very typically going to do much, much better. Now, I guess if, like, a lower tier mon is used better, or used more optimally than a higher tier mon, sure. But that's just all, like, anecdotal evidence, you know? Like, it's not really, like, I don't know. Interesting. Next up, we have K2 Slay here saying, so happy the draft is getting more popular, but I miss the old super scuffed 20-person Discord servers with their tier best, tier list, and super insane tiering. Feel like those are so much harder to come by now. Yeah, definitely. I feel like they're not hard to come by for the new player, because new people, and again, this is kind of like back on the nostalgia thing. I remember the same thing, you know, joining a league and drafting a Z crystal. Like, why are we drafting Z crystals? I think they exist. I think they just kind of exist outside of, like, the environment in which a lot of seasoned draft players are, right? If you've been playing for a long time, you probably have been, you know, met a lot of people and made a lot of great friends, which is incredible. But you're all playing in established leagues now, whether it be showdown tiered leagues, whether it be Wi-Fi content leagues, things like that. But there's still plenty of leagues that are starting up because they watched SPL season 1 and 2 and were like, holy shit, this is awesome. I want to make one of these with my friends. And it's super scuffed and they're having so much fun. I don't mean this in the sense of it's scuffed, because a lot of the people in the league have definitely played before, but I recently joined on Showdown, Don Schnack, his, like, you know, league he runs out of his Discord server, because I thought it'd be fun. Again, I wanted a more casual experience. It was so unbelievably refreshing how fucking excited people were to play in that league. I mean, this is like the perfect example. We were drafting, and they would ping the person who was next, and the on-deck hitter. So if you were first, you picked, they ping the second guy, and the third guy, they'd also ping and be like, hey, be ready to go. Like, dude, this shit's awesome. I've never seen that in the league before. And there's definitely some, like, you know, funny suspect things, maybe on the tier list or, and, like, opinions, things like that. But, dude, it's so much fun. I'm actually genuinely so excited to play in that league because everybody's just having a blast, man. And I definitely miss that, too. So I agree with K2 Slay here. I think it's just, we don't see them as much if you're in the scene as much, but they exist. And again, especially this generation, there's so many people finding Draft League and learning the format and making their own leagues and making their own fun little mistakes and things like that. Like, it's awesome. It's really cool. So you just gotta look right. All right, we got Big Zeke here, and they're gonna say, as always, free hidden power. No. You know, everybody cries about Terra. Yeah, let's give a free coverage move of any typing to every mod. That doesn't actually give any tangible downside with super training. Or hyper training. And then in terms of astral stat, recording stop awarding kills to mons who don't actually get the kill. Surviving explosion is not a kill. Mon dying recoil is not a kill. It does not affect differential, and I'm tired. See, I don't get this. This is a boomer take, right? Because I remember leagues way back in the day used to do this. But the way I see it is if my Pokemon forced the gale to explode in order to do damage to me, my Pokemon is the reason it's dead. If my Pokemon set up the sand that killed the Pokemon, my Pokemon is the reason it died. If my Pokemon set up Stealth Rock that knocked out a Pokemon, my Pokemon is the reason it died. It's not that nothing killed it, because it's not like it just died on air. It died to an effect from my team. Right? The only one I can maybe see an argument for is Boom, but even then, if it had a different move to click, it probably would have clicked it. So me being there forced that thing to die, regardless of whether or not it was planned by my opponent or not. So I don't agree. I really don't agree. I think it's kind of a, like, pointless argument anyways. But yeah, I don't agree. And we have Zeke saying, I think draft YouTube should increase the toxicity a little more and get back to the sports feeling draft used to have. I think it's a little too entertainment focused rather than a legitimate competition. It's obviously a happy medium, but I don't think there is right now. I don't think, and I think Marcus responded to this because I actually remember seeing this. I think Marcus was right in the sense that, like, toxicity isn't the right word, but competitive fire, yes. I do actually 100% agree that I don't think there's enough competitive fire. I can tell you right now, I've toned down like how competitive and fired up I get because I know it rubs some people the wrong way. I mean, we saw it all last generation. Now, granted, sometimes did I go over the top and get a little too upset about a fucking video game? For sure. But I put a lot of time in this stuff, man. And I love winning and I don't like losing. And I feel like that's a normal thing, right? I feel like that's everybody who plays this. And I think getting fired, as long as you're not being disrespectful to your opponent, getting fired up and like, fuck yeah, I won, I'm the GOAT, blah, blah, blah. Or being like, this is my rival, I want to beat his ass. Like, I don't want him to get a single mod off me. That's awesome. Again, it breeds rivalries and it breeds competitiveness and it, you know, helps people elevate one another. I have so many little fun rivalries with all my friends and stuff like that. I don't ever want to lose to Kurt or John or Ant or any of those guys. I want to whoop their ass every time I play. I want to smoke Keegan so I could beat him and be like, yeah, what's up, pussy? I smoked you. You know, like, that's fun, man. And I think that viewers would enjoy that too. There is a happy medium and you do have to be careful. And again, coming from someone from experience, it can lean into the side of toxicity. Obviously, competitiveness kind of brews into, you know, some toxic territory sometimes, but I do agree. I think like the fun, like, you know, competitive nature that Draft League is kind of lost sometimes in the content space because while we should all be friends, we're all kind of worried a little bit too much about just being besties, you know? We already talked about this one, tier draft over points draft, or most leagues give too many points. I can agree there. Maybe some leagues do give too many points. I've seen it a lot. Teams these days feel stacked. Again, this is more restrictive. Look, I see a tier 1 Thunderous T. The best Pokemon on the team is Thunderous Eye. That's tough. I really don't like that. Really leads to restrictive drafting. Not a fan of that at all. Teams feeling stacked is just power creep, brother. That's it, you know, in the nicest way. It's just power creep. That's just how the game works. We have mons that are all min-maxed out and stat-wise and stuff like that. And if you look at this team in particular, there's like no modern mons past Gen 6. I think like obviously power creep started big time in Gen 5, but like Gen 7, 8, 9, boom, just like absolutely exploded. So I think it's just like there wasn't as many good mons. And I think tier drafts are just restrictive. I don't think not as many good Pokemon equals interesting, you know? If the teams aren't good, the teams aren't good, you know? Just then that's not interesting. But yeah, next up is Henry here saying, been retired for a few leagues, but I gotta take, every team should get an RC type for the turns. So I played in a league like this once, and fun fact, we are also tiering for BBL right now. We're running a tournament because that's going to be running. We'll have an announcement video up on that in like a week or two, hopefully. No, we discussed maybe like throwing a couple RCs in the pool. Nuh-uh. Especially as that one is getting better. It got like Taunt and fucking Dragon Dance. And yeah, no, that's okay. No thanks. Next up we have Scribble here saying Terrapago is the most overrated mon in SV, primarily because you can turn into a burger flipper with a Terragos and something. Yeah, I definitely think it's very overrated right now. But I also think it's like slowly, it's like, I'm trying to think of a mon that has a syndrome like this. Where like, I started out people overhyping it. And then now people are like, no, it's dog shit. And then like, actually it's right here. But people either think it's here or here, and they don't think it's like right there. Like we talked about earlier, I think it's like a round 2 guy. Monsters struggle to hit monotypes are very overrated in general, like Ogerstrom, Wellspring, and Teal. If they are non-Terra, yes. If they are Terra, no. Their ability, on top of the crazy boost they get, on top of U-turn and knock, make them broken. They're incredible. Zapdos being bad is a terrible take. I'm not even going to entertain that thing. That is Draft League LeBron James. We are not going to entertain Zapdos is bad. Hit your hurricanes, buddy. I don't know what you want from me. Paul Bufano here, Electric, says, in high tier draft, I think Deoxys Speed should be legal if Palafin is legal. Is that hot? Yeah. Because they're not close. Is Palafin like a round 1 mod? For sure. As long as it can't Terra, right? Like, this is assuming both of these guys are Terra banned, in my opinion. I think Deoxys Speed is legitimately broken. I think it's just a little bit less than Pult. But I think they're both broken. Palafin is like a top 10 mon, maybe? I don't know. I'd have to do like a top 10 kind of thing. And again, I'll do another video like that soon, where like I'll do like a top 10 mons in Scarlet and Violet draft. I think I'll do that again soon. Maybe we'll do like the Google Sheet like we did last year. We usually do that once a year too. Let me know if you guys want to see that video. But yeah, I think that's a little hot there, Mr. Electric. Next up, we have Numbnexus here saying Walking Awake is underwhelming to play/use and is almost never worth the points. I agree, unless you're like Hard Sun. Terra Wake is really strong. Other than that, I'm also not a big fan of it. Heavy Duty Boots is better than having a hazard remover. This one got to be more well done. I agree. I mean, you hear it from me and Keegan all the time. I don't think hazard removal is a requirement in Generation 9. I think unless you have a legitimately good hazard removal option, it's not worth drafting a shitty hazard removal option when you can put boots on the hazard weak mons. Yes, is that restrictive? Yes. Would we prefer to have Great Tusk or Iron Treads or Dawn Fan or some similar level of Rapid Spinner? Tentacruel is another one I really like this generation. Yeah, of course. But that doesn't mean I need it, you know? I don't know. And then we have Iron Crown is incredibly underrated and should be utilized more and drafted more. I agree. Terra Crown has seen a lot of play in the showdown scene. I think regular Crown is even good. It was really tough for me to deal with in prep and play in the matchup against Dr. Slacking, sorry. Matthew drafts in BBR quarterfinals. Yeah. Semifinals. Haha. Damn, I made semis. I didn't feel like that when I lost it, but but yeah, I think Crown is actually a really, really solid Pokemon. Really difficult to switch into. I love like Future Sight AV sets. Tachion's really difficult to switch into for a lot of teams. The Focus Blast hits the checks really well, and you just Volt Switch around on things. That's about it. Pretty easy stuff. Really cool mod. And then like with Terra, he becomes Setup Cheeseman or like Choice Specs, Terra Steel, and Tachyon Cutter everything. Next up, we have Vivarium or Gunk. I don't know which one they go by. Drafting using Pokemon gets annoying. Boo! Boo! This dude hates fun. Boo! I love drafting with gifts. Who cares? As long as they type in the name of the mon after, who cares? Who cares? Next up, we have Zethor here saying, drafting a Shell Smash mon not named Mega Blastoise. You're drafting Mega Blastoise for Shell Smash? Fucking where? Is a detriment to your team. A detriment? That means it's a negative thing on your team. As it means your opponent will always have a mirror. That's not true. On their mind. And will limit setup opportunities for other mons as a result. Going into a but then doesn't that open up the Shell Smash guy later? And also, would they be used if it's brought specifically for Blastoise? Would they be using? I feel like it's a bit of a jump in logic. No? I feel like it's a bit of a jump in logic. I'm not here for that. I don't know. I'm not here for that. I get saying they're overrated, but a detriment is a bit much. You got smoked one too many times because you got Mirror Orbed on your Blastoise, bro. Next up, we have Sandy Simmies here saying, I love lots of league styles. However, while I do enjoy my super competitive leagues, I feel like more leagues should enforce a have fun mentality where everyone still drafts to eat, but no one's there just to win. I don't get this, right? Nobody is ever telling you you have to draft competitively, you have to play competitively. You can play however you want. I think enforcing a have fun rule, one, is impossible. It's physically impossible to be like, you're banned if you don't have fun. You know, it's kind of just like a, please have fun, guys. You know, and I hope they would be if they're playing, right? You know, the goal is to have fun if we're playing. But at the end of the day, the reason you're playing is to win. It could maybe not be your first priority. It could maybe be a byproduct and you want to win with specific sets. But forcing people to do that doesn't make sense. I think just the thing is just play more casual leagues, right? Playing leagues where people are just throwing together teams last minute. And again, it just depends on the environment in which you're playing. But enforcing a rule on it doesn't make any sense. Just people get more inherently competitive the more they play. And people want to win, right? I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Copycat is the best move in the game. I have seen some really, from Ellie here, I've seen some really cool use of Copycat, either from her with like cool like Jolteon stuff, like the Ice Beam Jolteon we saw like a couple weeks ago, a couple months ago, whenever that was in P4G, the Mimikyu, things like that. I've seen A12 do like the Final Gambit bullshit where you have like, you have like Annihilate, or I guess Victini in old gens, but Annihilate, Scarf Final Gambit, into Blissey, Copycat Final Gambit, into Vapo, Copycat Final Gambit, and like pick 3 right off rip. That's super funny. I think I ran like a gimmicky team like that at the beginning of the generation with like Staraptor, Lucario, a bunch of monsters kill themselves, Sand, and then Houndstone in OU, and obviously it wasn't like great, but it was fun. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting and neat techs that you can pull off with it, especially considering that some of the mons that get it are pretty fast. Like Jolteon's a really cool one. Next up, we have Kaz the Weeb here saying, I think league owners should be adjusting tier lists based on performances of their league based on following big YouTuber docs, since most leagues don't have 16 plus amazing Pokegames, Uzi Gunners, etc. Encourage uniqueness. I don't know if hot, but people complain a lot about tiers. I think you're on the right track. I think people should not tier based on big YouTube leagues. Just because I don't think the tiers are always great. And they obviously, it's not all end all know all. Like, you know, the BBR doesn't have the greatest tier list of all time, and you have to follow it or your league's bad, right? So I don't think people should do it because of that. And I do think people should tier things based on usage, but not in your league specifically. I think if you are going to do that, 16 coaches in your league is not a big enough sample size. You're not going to put fucking Keldeo at 18 points because Joe Bob Smith 174 has gotten 20 kills with the last 2 seasons. It's still where it should be, right? But if we see across the draft league scene, again, you look at other leagues, you look at big tournament scenes, and you kind of adjust your pricing based on that and the ebbs and flows of the format and who's using what and when, I think that's a great idea. And I know a lot of tours have kind of adopted that. If you look at like a lot of Smoke On tours, DPL, things like that, they've really adjusted their tiering based on what's being drafted. If something's not being drafted, it's going to drop like crazy. I remember I drafted like an 8-point Conkeldurr in one of these tours because Conk hasn't been used all gen, right? At least in the main scene. So yeah. Next up, we have Dench B given just super silly Mega Palmont, Digimon, Bikini Bottom, Pot of Greed. Man, Dench B, banger. Banger tweet, 10 out of 10. 2 likes. All right, next up we have Anders here. So 9 times out of 10 we have way too much on points to drop with. I think this is fair, especially in this generation where like all of the mons are super hurt or broken. I think leagues are worried about teams becoming very, very, very top heavy. And try and make the teams a little bit more stretched out overall and give people more points to work with because of that, but I don't think that inherently fixes the problem and can sometimes exacerbate it if we just have a million broken mons. I think that's definitely fair. I know like in BBR we've had a lot of problems with that too, so yeah. Next up we have Amy here saying, I think non-Terra Wellspring is actually good, and that tearing it isn't worth sacrificing flexibility on your high tier Terra captain. The raw damage is great, but the lack of an item slot in the locked Terra type will be forever limiting, making Wellspring worse than other Terra captains. I don't know if... So I think it depends on the instance. I do agree. I agree with the first part. I think that non-Terra Wellspring is good. I think that non-Terra Teal is good. They're draftable Pokemon. And are we sacrificing items? Well, I guess no matter what, you don't have an item on Wellspring, by the way. But like, say with Teal, are we sacrificing flexibility? Yeah, for sure. But I think the upsides of the ability on Teal getting a speed boost, Water getting a Spadef boost, on top of their crazy damage output, incredible move pools, I think it just 1000% makes up for it. Also with Teal, you can hold an item. That guy's broken. I love Ogre Teal with Terra. But you're already sacrificing an item slot no matter what in Ogre Wellspring. Yes, you cannot be versatile with your Terra typing, but it doesn't matter if you just U-turn on everything that resists water, or you can you just play rough, and then you on like dragons, and then use Ivy Cudgel through everything. It's so fucking strong. And it's ungodly bulky. It gets a pure water typing, which is better than grass water in a lot of instances. Sorry, I'm tired if you can't tell by me stumbling over my words. But yeah. Alright, next up we have Eric here. I'm going to read it off. It's going to be a little bit bad of a picture for a second. But they have 4 takes. SV Nat Deck is a perfectly viable format if tiered correctly, however nobody's tiering it correctly. Terra should not be banned in it, nor should be heavily restricted. I think people who can run Nat Decks leagues so often do so because they dislike Terra / don't fully understand the mechanics and it leads to terrible boards. I think that's fair as long as you're very restrictive with the Terra and like which top end guys can use it. I don't like restrictive Terra rules in the sense of like 9 pointers can Terra into 4 typings if you give up 3 points of Pokemon capital. Shouts to Keegan. I don't like those restrictive Terra rules, but I do think that the broken guys shouldn't Terra because they're broken with Terra. That simple. Everything being broken doesn't solve things feeling broken, right? Like it's not like, well, if everything's broken, then nothing's broken. No, it doesn't work that way. But yeah, I think SV Nat Deck is a viable format. It's just what do you want to play. And if people don't want to use Terra because they dislike it, again, it's their personal league. They're not going for competitiveness all the time. Number 2, the best SG tiers are currently coming out of Smog Draft. The major draft leagues have really dropped the ball in tiering this gen. Last gen, by this point, we had a largely unified rule set with Swish Nat decks. And there's far less disagreement on how good things were. Anyone turning Terra Rapid Foo over Terra Crack is just straight wrong. I think the reason we see so much variation within boards right now is because Terra is handled differently across the board by a ton of people. I think Smog Draft has done a lot of things great, but they've had some pretty scuffed tier draft boards at certain points. So I don't know. I don't think that unified. I think this gen has just been very tumultuous, so it's kind of hard to have a unified outlook on a lot of these things. Number 3, Shed Tails and mechanics should not be entertained. No matter the arguments there are for being balanced, it's expressly degenerate and easy to remove from the format, an absolute epitome of unfun. We should not tolerate for some sense of tier purity, whatever. Well, I don't think that's ever the thing. I mean, I think you shut down in the sense of like saying something's degenerate. That's like always like a good draft litmus test. So like, you need to figure some shit out, you know, in your own prep and play. Now, I do agree. I think that Shed-Tail is inherently uncompetitive, but degenerate is a bit tough. Let's relax. I had to play Shed-Tail into like Billy Drum fucking Terra Hands like a month or two ago. Was I fucking annoyed? Yeah, because I think it's bullshit too. But like, it's not that crazy. But this last one is one that I actually did see because I saw the name Lugia, and I won't lie to you. This is one that I actually potentially want to make a video on. I'm not going to go super in depth to it, but this one was really interesting. I think they went a little over the top in their explanation, but I actually do I don't know. I think it's, I wouldn't say I agree, but I think it's actually a very interesting discussion. Number 4, if Lugia was allowed in Paldea decks, it would not be good. It would be 15 points at best. That's where I think it's a little too much. Look at all the moves it lost right now. Tell me this Mon. I thought it's a Moron. I was like, whoa. Serves a meaningful role in a team. Its most potent set by far is Calm Mind. And yeah, it's bulky as shit and pretty fast, but it still only has 90 offenses. A pretty mediocre dual stab. Aeroblast being a good move is the only saving grace. I can see it as being a cool lead breaker with Calm Mind weakness policy, but it's on beyond offensive sets, it doesn't do much. While all its utility moves, no Toxic, T-Wave, or Defog. Trick would be a meme because if you're not seeing boots or weakness policy, what are you doing? What item would you want to trick in 90% of matchups? Why would you run Bootsabot with a million other less expensive setters? No pivoting options or knock. Torn T exists. It has Whirlwind / Detail and Whirlpool for other utility. After that, it's just a super bulky mon with setup offense. No disruption beyond phasing either. It would be fine, but it's certainly not broken as a round 1 pick. It would be awful. So, I think, in general, discussing Lugia and Gen 9, 1 is interesting to like kind of talk about how fucking insane Terra is, or Gen 9 is. But 2, I think there are some fair points there. Do I think it's 15 points? Jesus. This mod went from perennial Uber because of a couple nerfs to 15 points. These Darkrai craze go crazy. Now, I think it is valid. Do you think it is potentially allowable? I do not think it's allowable after thinking on it more. I actually thought about this a lot and talked about this a bunch with a bunch of goons and stuff like that. I don't think it's allowable, or I think it's discussable, and I would love to make a more drawn-out video on it, kind of like talking about why I don't think it's allowable, despite it being much, much worse. And as a guy who's tiering for BBL right now, I think Lugia is a terrible Uber in Ubers, and I'm kind of fighting to move it down a little bit. And the tweet kind of got me thinking about it a little bit more, but yeah. Next up, we have Sharpie Plays here saying needing Terra Captains overrated. Just like Liv, you need to go to jail. Needing Terra Captains is very not overrated. It's perfectly rated. We all need them. We all need them. Please don't do Open Terra on everything. Please don't do that. Sounds like you farmed a league with Open Terra. That's what it sounds like to me. Next up, we have Happy Gate here saying, I don't know if that's a hot take or just a take I have, but Smoke on Proper should have draft to SPL and SCL. Smog Draft has been wildly successful and popular, and while it is new to the site, the fact that there's no trophy tour for it yet undersells the top talent on the site. I think Smog Draft has been an incredible thing for draft in general, and I don't know the benefits it's had on Smogon. I'm not a part of that scene. I think that draft is too long-winded, drawn out, and the format doesn't translate well to SPL. Like, how would you do it? Would you have the different players in SPL who are playing the draft here? Would you have them just play in a mini draft league? where you match them up separately. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you just have them do like draft creation, and then they would get their matchup every week and be like, oh, okay. You know, I don't know. I don't know. It's definitely an interesting idea. I don't think it would translate well because I think it takes too long. But yeah, I do think, I mean, draft has like its own trophy tours, right? It doesn't need to be a mainstay on Smogon. It is a side metagame. I think draft players kind of like fail to like see that. And they're like, wow, how does everybody not love draft and no draft? Let's think about it. Pokemon. Casual play. Competitive play. Which is doubles. Right? Battle Spot. Smogon. Draft League. There's levels to the shit, and we are at the bottom, man. We are about as niche as it gets, so I don't know if it would be very mutually beneficial either. And Jashoba saying, reject Gen 9 and Terra, return to Gen 7. So true, bestie. We're spinning right now. Next up, we have Pokemon Trainer Orange. I think 8-Mon is the best draft format opposed to the standard 9 to 11. That's fair. Yeah, I think this is a preference thing, but yeah, I think it's fair. I think they both have their merits and their downsides. And then the top 8 make playoffs, and top seeds get to pick their opponents, whatever that's called. The he picked me format is better than 1v8, 2v7, etc., or any other standard league playoff bracket from both a competitive perspective and content. Yeah, I love it. Shout out to Ant for coming up with the idea. That's my goat. It's whatever. But yeah, I think the idea of rewarding the top end, right? So that our top end coaches just don't fuck off at the end of the season and not care once they clinch for playoffs is interesting from a content perspective, but it also gives a reward for the top guy for making it that far and incentivizes them to do really well. It also leads to more fun and interesting matchups, whether it be from a strategic standpoint in the sense of I smoked this guy in regular season, love this matchup, or I never got to play this guy, or this is my rival, I gotta take him on, right? That stuff's awesome from competitive and a content perspective. I agree 100%. Next up, we have Berna saying, touching hot water here, VGC draft is 100% a Mickey Mouse tier and should never be taken that seriously, as best of 3 is 100% against what draft stands for. It's the same as taking DPP and black and white draft seriously. Whew, Little Cup and ADV dodged a bullet there. They're not as Mickey as DPP, VGC, and black and white. I don't agree. I think that VGC leagues, it's a different skill set and a different rules parameter. I think if we're looking at it from the perspective of singles draft league, of course it's going to feel completely different in the antithesis, but that's not what it is, right? It's VGC draft league. So I don't really agree. Best of 3 is 100% against what draft stands for. Yeah, if it's singles draft, sure. But that's not what we're playing. We're playing doubles draft. I don't get it. Maybe it's just the fact that like maybe we don't play VGC, so it's hard to make that connection. We don't enjoy it. And again, not enjoying it is different from it being bad. And I think that's where draft players kind of have a tough time. Next up, we have Corey here saying anything past Gen 7 is not worth playing in a draft format. You're old. I mean, that's just a personal preference. I think saying objectively Gen 8 and 9 are like not playable is a bit ridiculous, but hey, who's to say? Next thing we have Devin here saying Mega Aggron is the best steel type in the game. Best? Maybe not. Great? Hell yeah, brother. It is. Oh no. Best? I don't know about that, but very good for very good value? For surely. I agree. Great mon. Next thing we have Fungal with probably the funniest one, considering we already read it too. A12 is wrong, Diggersby go to hell. It's very funny. I just like the way that's worded. I agree. Best take of the thread. Next thing we have Ramses here saying, if you want to use Extra Drill and SV, the best sand setter to use is Sandaconda and Terra Extra Drill. Other options are not worth drafting for their price. Well, Sandaconda is cheap, meaning you get more flexibility to not feel pressure to use sand every week. Also, glare. Put on my Gojo glasses. Sandaconda? Your disappointed Gojo Glass's father is upset with you for drafting Sandaconda as your sand setter. Don't ever do that. I think Sandaconda is a great low tier ground, right? Like glare, rocks, like you said. Cool mon. Very unreliable when it comes to setting up the sand. And it's also the same reason why I think Hippo is not a good partner with Drill, because Hippo is stuffed by the same shit that Extra Drill is stuffed by. That is Sandaconda, but 10 times worse. And as a worse Pokemon. Yes, it is cheap. I understand T-Tar is expensive, but it is worth the draft. It is worth it if you want to make drill work. I miss Gigalith. I 100% miss a Gigalith. Cheap and does what T-Tar does for way cheaper, and I prefer Gigalith to T-Tar with drill, just because of that price point. However, you're not going to tell me that we drafted Sandaconda for sand. It loses the same shit drill loses too. It's very unreliable, and it's just a worse Pokemon than Hippo, right? Like, just a worse Pokemon. Next up, we have reaction here saying Vaporeon is an absolute fraud of a Pokemon. I say this as someone who has, it is one of their absolute favorites. It's Alamomola for people who love donating free turns to their opponent. Okay. No. Okay, it's the opposite. Okay. I don't think Vaporeon is good. I agree. Let's finish. Dude should be 6 points. That's Aloe. Can't remember seeing a Vaporeon make it to into Draft League semifinals. So you saw it make it into quarters. I'm not big on Vapo. However, I would take Vapo with 3 legs before I drafted dog shit Aloe, right? That's who's supposed to be in 6 points. Shouts to the BBR Summer Scramble. But yeah, I do think that Vapo is kind of bad. Not the greatest Pokemon in the world. But free turns, I think that we might be using it incorrectly. We might not be flip turning in the capacity that we're supposed to. Yeah, I definitely don't think so. I think losing Toxic is a little bit annoying. I think it got Skull back. As long as it got Skull back, it's good too. But very bulky, keeps itself healthy and keeps its team weight somewhat healthy if we need to. Not bad. Next up, we have JMG here saying the drafting process points to Terra's legalities that Smogon tournament uses better than it is used in content/regular leagues. I do agree in content leagues. I think that it's taken a little while for content leagues to really try and adjust their formula and maybe admit like, hey, maybe these Terra rules ain't it. I do think that when it comes to like legalities, Terra rule sets, the Wi-Fi scene is miles behind the Showdown scene in general, and I guess Smogon tournaments, right? I don't know what /regular leagues means. That might just mean like casual leagues on Showdown, and I think that's fair because like Smogon's tournaments are meant to be more competitive in nature, right? So they're gonna have more objective rule sets, opinions from a lot of top players and things like that. So I think this is a fair take. Say it's like the hottest take in the world, but I think it's a fair take for sure. I guess it's not a hot take to me because I agree with it though, so maybe it is a little bit of a hot take. Let me know what you guys think about Terra rules in general. I'd love to hear what you guys think the most optimal Terra rules are and why. Next up, we have Wyvern here saying Darkrai isn't mid. As a Darkrai hater for the longest time, I thought it was ass, but after using it, I think it's pretty strong. It's really hard to start from sweeping due to Nasty Plot and Deceptive Bulk. My favorite item run on it is a super effective berry because of that. Yeah, I mean, I think Darkrai is great. We just saw Amo win a championship with it, and he was very versatile with it, running like Assault Vest sets and Max Fizdef sets and a bunch of fun shit. Really bulky, incredible move pool, can plot our CM, and yeah, just a great Pokemon. And again, very deceptively bulky. People forget about that. It is still a mythical Pokemon with a very high base stat total. It's fast and strong first and foremost, but it's not frail. It's not hard to find opportunities to set up. Next up, we have Sai, or Richard the Accountant, saying Pikachu is severely underrated, maybe the best low tier Terracat in the format. I mean, it depends on like what you consider low tier Terracat, because again, rules are all over the place this generation. They are completely all over the place. So I don't know what you would consider a low tier Terracat, but I would be actually willing to bet that it can't be the best one. Funmon, I think it's definitely like underrated. It's either underrated in the sense that people are like, I'm not drafting fucking Pikachu in my 7, or people are like, Pikachu is the greatest. I Oko to Charmander one time, right? Like, I think there's a fine line. I know, like, one of my favorite games ever, I always talk about it in these discussion videos because it always comes up, was when Kurt smoked Liv and NCP in Gen 8 with a Focus Punch Pikachu, and she had hard stall. They get massacred. Kurt also played out of his mind, and we brought the perfect set. But yeah, I always think that's always one of my favorite games. It definitely is a mon that can do well, but most severely underrated and best low tier Terracat is probably a stretch. Next up, we have Robert here saying National Dex is miles more enjoyable to watch and play than any regional decks. Yeah, if it was on Wi-Fi, I'd agree. Watch, maybe play. I think that's just personal preference. Watch, yeah, it would definitely be more interesting. We'd have Ultra Beasts and Megas and Z-Moves and Terra, a bunch of crazy shit. But we can't, right? We can't have both of those things, or we can't see them on Wi-Fi. It's not interesting to watch Showdown games, so from a viewer perspective. Unless you are super, super into draft. And if you are, then you don't care what you're watching, probably. But, I mean, when the NatDex mod comes out, just to you know, please drop it and give me early access. Please. That will be incredible, and I'm super excited for that. Except we have Pano here saying, slacking is an absolute weapon and must be respected in the team builder. ... I'm serious, haha. That's how you know a take is kind of shitty. Someone says, I'm being serious. I think Pano was actually in the Dawshack League with me. I think I was shit-talking slacking like 2 days ago, so this is very funny that this was tweeted before this. No. I mean, it must be respected in the sense that it's strong as shit. And maybe if it's like a Terra Cap, like you respect a little bit more, but at the end of the day, this is a slacking. Yeah, I don't know. Very interesting. Next up, we have Evan here saying, most top-tier monster are overrated. Dragapult doesn't hit hard and lose to fairies. Again, I think we're kind of missing the point where Dragapult's good. I'll be honest. A mon being broken doesn't mean it's outgoing and 2-KOing everything. It just doesn't. Valiant needs booster 95% of the time. Without it's okay. I actually severely disagree. As a guy who just took Valiant to semis in PPR, first time using it, got booster energy once. It's not that one time, so it's the right set in the matchup. But at once, it was Kill Leader. Or Second League. It might have been Second League. So I used it well in a pretty competitive Wi-Fi league, and it did not need booster. Urshifu needs a lot for it. Black Glasses, choice man hit as hard as possible. It needs Scarf to be fast. I mean, yeah, you're kind of like locked. It just depends on the matchup, but you kind of just force your own progress. You turn around, Wicked Blow through some things, and you kill stuff. Torn-T is okay. I don't know what the take is there, but Torn-T is okay. I like Torn. He has regen and U-turn and knockoff and Hurricane and Bleak Wind and Nasty Plot. Terratorn is God. I will say, if you guys get the chance to draft Terratorn, draft him. Broken Mod. Next up, we have Aggro. I'm not reading their at. I'm just going to say their name is Aggro. Alright, Aggro, what do you think? Weather is cringe, and for people who can't actually team build, oh no, but he got smoked by a Swampert or Megapert recently. I don't think that's true. I mean this in a nice way. I think that weather, and especially hard weather, like hard rain, is a draft litmus test and is kind of a, for lack of a better term, a noob killer. It does really well against newer players who struggle with certain team building and playing concepts. I'm the case for you. Puppy Pone is going to say Meowscarada is the best one in draft. It is great. It is really good. I would say best. It's really fun to use, though. I actually really, really want to draft Meow for a full season. I have not gotten to in a while. Really strong mon. Next up, we have Nick Time saying Dio Speed is better than Pult and Valiant. I don't think that's the hottest take in the world, but I mean, like, I disagree. I think Pult's better. It's way better than Valiant. That's for damn sure. But yeah, Dio Speed is great. Low kick is overrated. I feel like I only see low kicks drafted in the Wi-Fi set, so I think that's fair. I think it's really strong. It's really fun. With Terra, it's really powerful, but yeah, big clear downsides, and it takes up a whole team slot, which is a little unfortunate. So yeah. And Gouging Fire is in the Pult, Valiant, and Dio tier. That one I don't agree with. I think Terra Gouging, sure. Non-Terra Gouging is a lot easier to deal with, in my opinion, than people like to give it credit for. Next up, we have Bick. Disrespecting my goat. Latios is a burger flipper. It does no types of damage unless it's set up. What? And it's barely getting kills when it needs to? Did we accidentally not put an A for Latios? The lack of high base power moves. It clicks Draco Meteor. All of its moves it clicks are 90 base power. Bick, what are you talking about? They're all 90 and above. They're all high base power. People think the buff to Purge is cool, but you're relying on a coin flip to draw. You have it's already strong, it's 95, and you have a 50% chance to just drop the Spadef. It's a great mon. Should it be your best mon on your team? No. You're going to jail for that one, Bick. You. Jail. Because it's incredible. Next up, we have Tyler here, saying running booster energy on Valiant is 9 times out of 10 dogshit prep. That mod is best used as a breaker in most matchups, and not taking advantage is a waste if it is a round 1 pick. Yeah, I think that's fair. We just talked about it. I barely ever ran it. I used to click buttons, and it clicked buttons. I also think using it as a breaker 9 times out of 10, though, is a little bit close-minded. You can still be a sweeper without, what do you call it? My god. What am I? Booster energy. Yeah. Next up, we have Mario here saying Psychic Noise is overrated as hell. It's way too weak. I also prefer Rat Nat decks. Yeah, that's just a preference. That's fair. Psychic Noise, I think it's a very niche move. I think we saw a lot of it spammed when the DLC dropped like a year ago. Because it was a cool new toy that stopped healing. Fun, but yeah, I do agree. Like, it's very niche. I think you just need to use it correctly. Next up, we have Radioactive Mayo here, saying Shed Tail is not broken as long as Cyclosaur is up with the top tiers in the tier list. I don't agree. It also makes Sorthorn and Shed Tail more viable and fun to draft. Yeah, for the Shed Tail user. I don't like the argument of allowing certain moves and rule sets in order to make certain mons better, diversify the pool, or whatever it may be. I think that's just, like, bad on principle. Next up, we have Big Man Lucas here saying Azumarill is Loki slept on, especially in that deck. So it can be tailored to be any problem mon you want to be 1v1 or just sweep games out of nowhere. It's insanely versatile with 3 great abilities and one of the best defensive typings. Yeah, I mean, I've been on the Azu hype train all gen. It is my favorite water and fairy. Or it is my, I guess there's only 2 of them in the decks and 3 total. It is one of my favorite waters and probably my favorite fairy to draft in Palkia decks. Absolutely love that thing. It beats like the whole top end of the board. It is incredibly strong and is incredibly versatile. 100% Lucas. I agree. Heavy. Next up, we have Not the Zodiac saying, not as hot as it used to be, Revival Blessing should be legal due to the Pokemon that get access to it. Palmon is a good mid-tier Pokemon that struggles to fit Revival Blessing on most sets and would rather not be a support Pokemon. Rabasca is just straight bad. I'd be interested to see. I still think it's kind of uncompetitive to give mons second lives completely upon dying because Pokemon is about resource management and managing your resources. Whereas like with a move like Healing Wish, you at least have to keep the sack in position out and save it and sack your whole Pokemon, whereas Revival Blessing, you're just getting them on back to half for free. And if it has recovery or just doesn't need health, that's kind of insane. I don't know. And we have Caden here saying everybody has to do that. Slowbro, Slow King, G Slow King. Where's G-Bro? No G-Bro love? Yo, that's crazy. Regen is just broken. Regen is broken. Well, we can agree. GD saying banning Celesteela improves the format immensely. Well, play some Paldea decks. It's banned there. That's pretty cool. And also, no, you aren't funny for picking a round 1 5-point mod. Yeah, I think sometimes people are a little silly with stuff like that, but hey, yeah, you can let them be silly. And then we have a couple to end with Donkolbus. Am I saying that right? Donkolbus. Ogerpon is not healthy, or at least conducive to fun. Is not a healthy, or at least conducive to fun mon to have in a Paldea Dex meta. The fact that there are 4 of them, they function pretty much the same. Ooh, that's where I disagree. It means it can be optional to draft a dedicated Ogerpon check if you have to play them all in a season. Been there, and that's bad. I do agree it can be like not fun. I don't think it's inherently unbalanced. Stop. Yeah, I don't think it's inherently unbalanced, but I do get what people are saying in this. It's not fun. But I just don't think they play the same, though. So, I don't know. Maybe I disagree there. We're going to go right there. Cool. Dragapult is good, but barely a top 5 mon anymore. I would rank them in no particular order. Valiant, Tusk, Dio Speed, Gouging, Spec, Pull. Spec is down your 2. Valiant is above the... I need to make... They're all really close. Okay, that's at least fair. I need to make my own, like, top 10 mons and then, like, have a community vote for them again. And we have a last one. Webs are more viable than people give it credit for. In draft, especially because they can invalidate Scarfers as revenge killers against fast mons, which frees up your opponent's offensive options more. Especially if you have a good ghost like Pull to keep the webs up. I mean, yeah, it keeps spin away, but my thing with webs in Gen 8 and 9 is what if on my fast Pokemon I just run Boots? Yeah, sure, I mean, then they're not the fast Scarf that you want, but I feel like that's one tangible upside opposed to a whole wasted turn potentially, you know? So, I don't know. Snowy's being rude. What are you doing? So stop talking. I'm ready to go to bed. Hold on, Snowy Cam. Don't look at the clothes on my bed. I promise I'll do my laundry tomorrow, Mom. Look it. Can you say hello? Snowy Cam. Okay, I'm sorry. We went on a tangent. If you can't tell, I'm tired. I might skip class in the morning. But yeah, that's going to be the hot takes for this. Again, we recorded a lot. I mean, this video is probably like an hour and a half. I did it in 2 spurts because I wanted to hang out with friends and call for a little bit tonight before they went to bed. I definitely think there's some pretty crazy ones. Some ones I agree with, some ones I didn't. I kind of dropped in some takes of my own throughout there too, like some hot takes that I had. Let me know what your hot takes are in the comments below. Let me know what your optimal Terra rules might be, and let me know if you want to see like a top 10 mountain probably a next draft video, because that's something else I can kind of get on and kind of explain my reasons why, and do like a full scripted video and all that stuff, and have all the pretty graphics from study. So yeah, again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Drop a like if you enjoyed, sub if you're new, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Later.